one of the full item boosts this time around, which I haven't really been using my items too much, so I already have full of. One of the enemies we have to deal with is these kind of like Sniper Joe-esque creatures that go ahead and charge up a crystal and then fire it at you. As you see, I just picked up an extra life, which I now have several of them because they just seemingly keep giving them to me every time I kill random enemies. I have more lives, I think, get dropped in this and Mega Man 6 than any of the previous Mega Man games. Now as I drop through, I'm going to go ahead to the right and go ahead and grab the energy tank. Now this stage also contains our first of the Mega Tanks. I'm going to go ahead and use the Rush Coil, which you can see works a little bit differently than it has in the previous games. And this Mega one here is not only going to refill my health, but it also refill my items. Take out these little mice robots and try to get up the platform without taking a hit. And now here's where a little bit of trouble begins. We have to go ahead and grab our letter, which as you can see was really hard to grab there. You had to make sure you were focused on the left wall, but not too far so that you would have ended up hitting the spikes. But when it moves that one screen down, hold the left button as hard as possible to make sure you slide just over enough to be able to go ahead and grab the letter, which was the V, or the Roman numeral 5, for the Mega Man 5 spelling that we've been working out so far. Now we walk right into Crystal Man's lair, and as you'll see, he's overall not as challenging as some previous bosses as well. He's a good warm-up robot master if you want to start with him. You can go ahead and get a good shot in every time you charge up, and you can see he either shoots just one projectile at once, or he has those 4 projectiles, which are a little harder to dodge. But if you're constantly moving around, you have an easy time at dodging his single projectile, and can charge up your shot so that when he lands or is getting ready to jump again, you can nail him with a good clean shot. Now with Crystal Man defeated, we have our third of the letters, we've defeated our third of the Robot Masters, and now we get our third ability, which is the Crystal Eye. So let's go ahead, and with the top row now complete, I'm going to go ahead to the bottom row here, and I'm going to start with Wave Man. Now, Wave Man has a pretty interesting level, as well as a pretty interesting Robot Master overall. Of course, he's going to have a water theme. There's tons of water-themed Robot Masters. However, you end up getting on a jet ski later on the level, and have to defeat pretty much the second half of his stage while riding a jet ski. We also see a bubble part in this stage, which is pretty interesting and was unique for the time, and it ended up being reused in Mega Man 9. With this being the 5th installment of Mega Man on the NES, they really had to kind of come up with some new ways to make the game more interesting. They already had added the slide and already added the charge-up ability, so how are you going to make people want to play the new Mega Man game? What could you make out to be the new innovative thing? And I guess adding some of the collecting of the letters, as well as adding some unique gameplay elements, including the water ski we're going to see later on in this game, and just some unique stages, such as this whole bubble scene that we're seeing right now, which, like I said before, we actually got to see again in Splash Woman stage in Mega Man 9. It's actually almost the exact same kind of lineup that we saw in that one, except this one I think is a little bit more challenging to complete than the one in Splash Woman stage. Now as we make it to the end of this platform here, we jump onto our water ski. And the control is something that we've seen in some previous other games. There were some similar scenes to this, however it's the first time we saw something like this in a Mega Man title. You have your Mega Buster going ahead and shooting random enemies that are coming from the front, as well as the back of you, and you have to take out some rather large enemies that we've seen in classic Mega Man games as well, with the big black screen behind them, and then just you against this big monster enemy, whatever it was. Either a giant cat or a giant hippopotamus, or in this case we have the head of a giant octopus. As you see, here's our first battle with it. As you can see, at least it looks like a giant octopus coming out of the water, shooting out random things from its mouth area. The big blast. It's pretty easy to dodge them. Just stay on the left side of the screen and take shots at it. You gotta shoot in it the green jewel on the helmet part of it. After a bunch of good shots, it's taken care of and we continue on. So we have some jumping fish robots, as well as the Sniper Joes that are also riding the water skate. Now during this part you also have to be on the lookout because the letter, which is going to be a letter E, is in this part of the stage. You'll see it'll be slightly above you and you're going to have to jump up to go ahead and grab it. So be waiting just for the right second to go ahead and grab it. And there it is. You gotta be careful though right there, because if you accidentally get hit by one of the fish at that exact moment, you'll be knocked back a little bit and be stunned, and you won't have time to be able to jump up and grab that letter. Right after we get the letter, however, is the end, and it's going to lead us right into our boss battle here against Wave Man. Now, Wave Man's main ability is he kind of has the harpoon on his hand he's going to shoot out, as well as he controls these water geysers that shoot up from the ground. He likes to raise one of them, which will give you plenty of opportunity to get a good shot on him, and then he'll shoot the harpoon out and then do a jump. Pretty simple pattern to learn, a little bit challenging sometimes if you get hit by the geyser coming out, but usually they'll come out where you were standing, so they're easy to dodge. Just where you're standing when he lands, just slightly move a little bit just to see where the geyser comes out, and then prepare your shot. His harpoon, since it just goes straight and isn't like one of the homing style weapons, is really easy to dodge. However, by defeating him, we've defeated our 4th Robot Master, and we gain his ability, which is this move that shoots out little waves of water that kind of rush onto the ground and kind of crash over people. So now we're going to go ahead and move on. Since we're halfway done our Robot Masters, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Gyro Man. Now, Gyro Man is a wind-themed level since he has a giant fan on his back. So you can expect a kind of Airman, Windman, Cloudman type level going on through this one. However, we start off with a moving elevator stage, which is something we really haven't seen in Mega Man. And we're going to have another one of those late in the stage, right before the boss, where we're going to have to, it's going to go ahead and start moving upwards slowly, and we're going to have to dodge spikes that are coming from the ceiling. Now in this stage we have some of the perils that we've already faced before in some previous air cloud stages, mainly that the clouds of course are going to try to get in our way, making them in the foreground more than the background to try to hide you in certain jumps and try to prevent you from seeing your character when trying to make certain jumps over some of the harder areas of the level. Other than that though, it's more of the same that we've seen before, and we have some of these returning moving platforms that we saw in the Stone Man stage for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and show off at least a couple of the abilities throughout the run. I know I've neglected to do so in some of my previous runs. As you can see, with the Water Wave ability, it rushes a little jet of water over the area of land that it's on, and then we'll just go ahead and fall off. It ends up not being very useful of ability unless you're using it against the Robot Master, which it's strong against, which happens to be Starman. Now here is Crystal Man's ability. You shoot out a crystal ball, which does some damage to some of the enemies. Some of the enemies it does more to, but it really isn't overall a very useful ability compared to just the Mega Buster. And here is Stone Man's ability, the rotating stones, ends up being a pretty useful weapon overall. Now here's the falling platforms when you're running across them. We've seen it before, however, you gotta try to wait a second on the one, to drop down just far enough to grab the letter A, and then jump off of it and continue on. Now here's that part with the elevator I mentioned earlier, where we're going to have to slowly scroll upwards as the elevator does, and watch out for the spikes. It can be a little bit difficult, and you kind of have to get used to using the slide ability if you're not used to it, in order to progress through it. Now after that little elevator part is done, we have a little bit farther to go before we actually end up reaching the end of the stage. It ends up being one of the longer stages, in my opinion, in the game. Now I'm going ahead and just using the stone ability a little bit more because it ends up being overall one of the best abilities that you get in this game. However, I will switch off of it because it's time to do battle with Gyro Man. Now Gyro Man ends up being one of the harder bosses in this game. He kind of reminds me of some of the other Mega Man bosses that were pretty tough, including most recently Tornado Man. He throws out his blades that go ahead and spin around at you, which aren't hard to dodge. However, he then goes up into the clouds so you can't see him, moves around up there, and then tries to land on you, basically, before throwing out some more of the blades. It comes down to really the kind of the timing of waiting for him to land, and then just hoping and moving and sliding around to dodge the blades so they don't end up running into you. This is one of those battles I always seem to take at least a little bit of damage, and the blades hurt so much, it can definitely be a pain to defeat him. So I highly either recommend using an energy tank if you've collected him, or just go ahead and use his weakness against him, which if you had it already would have been the gravity hold move. However, once he's defeated, we go ahead and leave the stage and gain his ability. Which we don't just get his ability, the Gyro attack, but we're also going to be getting the Rust Jet. So now we move on with 3 Robot Masters left. I'm going to go ahead and pick probably my favorite of this game, Napalm Man. And now, he may not be really the most amazing looking of the Robot Masters in this game, I just love his stage. It's kind of a jungle theme, like a Vietnam themed level to go along with napalm. Of course, with the famous quote of Apocalypse Now being, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning," it really comes full force in the stage. It just reminds me fully of that, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was trying to be with the tigers and everything else that's going on throughout this level. Now, as we continue on in the stage, we have to deal with some of these rotating spike walls that are coming at us.